Nanny hides millionaire's son from cruel stepmother. When he comes home, he's in shock. Amanda Wilson never imagined that one day she would have to make such a desperate decision in the mansion where she had worked for 5 years. The situation had reached its limit, and she knew she could no longer pretend not to see what was happening when the boss left for work. It was when she heard the screams coming from little Ethan's room that her heart raced. She ran through the corridor of the luxurious residence in Beverly Hills, Los Angeles, and found the boy's stepmother holding a leather belt in her hands, while the boy, only 5 years old, cried curled up in the corner of the room. Without thinking twice, Amanda picked up Ethan and quickly took him to the guest room, whispering in his ear to stay very quiet while she hid him in the closet, lined with fine wood. "Stay here, my love. Don't make a sound," murmured Amanda, stroking the blonde hair of the boy trembling in her arms. Outside, Victoria's firm footsteps echoed through the marble corridor. The 32-year-old former model, who had married businessman Michael Harrison just 6 months ago, was searching the entire house with an expression of fury on her perfectly made-up face. "Ethan, where are you, disobedient boy?" shouted Victoria, her sharp voice cutting through the silence of the Los Angeles afternoon. Amanda felt sweat running down her back as she silently closed the closet door. She knew she had crossed a dangerous line. In 5 years of taking care of Ethan, since he was just a baby, she had never directly challenged the authority of any family member, but she had also never witnessed anything like this. Victoria's footsteps approached the guest room. Amanda quickly left the room and pretended to be arranging the paintings in the hallway when Ethan's stepmother appeared in front of her. "Where is that brat?" asked Victoria, her green eyes blazing with anger. "I don't know, ma'am. I haven't seen him since lunch," lied Amanda, trying to keep her voice steady. Victoria stared at her suspiciously for a few seconds that seemed like an eternity. Then she continued her search through the other rooms of the 3-story mansion, her high-heeled sandals hammering impatiently against the floor. Amanda took the opportunity to return to the closet and check if Ethan was okay. The boy looked at her with his big blue eyes full of tears, hugging the teddy bear that his real mother had given him before she passed away 3 years ago. "Aunt Mandy, I didn't do anything wrong," whispered Ethan, using the affectionate nickname he always gave the nanny. "I know, my angel." "You didn't do anything wrong," replied Amanda, feeling her heart break at the child's state. It was at that moment that they heard the sound of the electronic gate opening. Michael had come home early from work that day. Amanda felt a mix of relief and panic. Relief because she knew Ethan would be safe with his father nearby, and panic because she would have to explain why she had hidden the boy. The sound of male footsteps echoed through the house, followed by Michael's deep voice calling for Victoria. Amanda heard the tense conversation unfolding downstairs, but couldn't make out the exact words. What she didn't know was that Victoria was telling her own version of events. "Michael, thank God you're here," exclaimed Victoria, running toward her husband with perfectly calculated tears in her eyes. Something terrible happened. "What was it? Where is Ethan?" asked Michael, dropping his executive briefcase on the marble floor. "Amanda, she hit Ethan and then hid him somewhere in the house. I caught her hitting our boy, and when I went to stop her, she ran away with him," said Victoria, sobbing dramatically. Michael felt his blood run cold. Amanda had taken care of Ethan since he was born. It was impossible to believe she would do something like that. But on the other hand, his wife was clearly shaken and desperate. "This can't be right, Victoria. Amanda would never do something like that," said Michael, trying to process the information. "I saw it with my own eyes," insisted Victoria. "She had a belt in her hand, hitting Ethan because he spilled juice on his new clothes. When I tried to defend him, she ran off with him. I've searched the whole house and can't find my son anywhere." At that moment, Amanda came down the stairs, knowing she could no longer delay the confrontation. Her legs were trembling, but she knew she had to protect Ethan, even if it cost her her job. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. "Mr. Michael," said Amanda, stopping at the bottom of the staircase. "Amanda, where is Ethan? What happened here?" asked Michael, his voice filled with worry and confusion. Before Amanda could answer, Victoria stepped forward. She hid him. She kidnapped our son after attacking him. Call someone, Michael. This woman is dangerous. That's not true, said Amanda, keeping calm despite her growing desperation. I would never lay a finger on Ethan. He is safe, but... But what? Interrupted Michael, his patience wearing thin. Where is my son? Amanda looked at Victoria and then at Michael. She knew that anything she said would be her word against the boss's wife's, but Ethan was her priority. He's in the guest room, in the closet. I put him there to protect him, said Amanda, taking a deep breath. Protect him from what? Asked Michael, walking toward the stairs. From her, replied Amanda, pointing at Victoria. The silence that followed was deafening. Victoria feigned indignation, putting her hand to her chest as if she had been slapped. How dare you accuse me? After everything you did to that innocent child, Victoria dramatized. Michael ran up the stairs, followed by both women. When they reached the guest room, he opened the closet and found Ethan curled up in the back, hugging his teddy bear, his eyes red from crying. Daddy, murmured Ethan, stretching out his thin little arms. Michael picked up his son, feeling him tremble against his chest. The businessman's heart tightened at the sight of the child's condition. What happened, son? Why were you hiding here? Asked Michael, stroking the boy's hair. Ethan looked nervously at Victoria and then at Amanda. His words came out in broken phrases. I spilled the juice. And she got mad. Took the belt from your room. See, interrupted Victoria. He's confirming himself that Amanda hit him because of the juice. That's why she locked him in the closet, as punishment. Michael looked at Amanda, searching for answers in her eyes. The nanny knew she was losing the battle. Victoria was a skilled manipulator, and Ethan was too scared to tell the whole truth. Mr. Michael, I swear on my own life that I would never hurt Ethan. Please check the security cameras. They will show what really happened, pleaded Amanda. The upstairs cameras have been broken for 2 weeks, Victoria said quickly. You said yourself you were going to have them fixed next week. It was true. Michael remembered postponing the repair because he was focused on a big deal at the company. Now he bitterly regretted that decision. Amanda, I can no longer trust you around my son, said Michael, the words heavy on his tongue. Gather your things and leave. Today. Tears began to stream down Amanda's face. In 5 years working at that house, she had practically become part of the family. Ethan was like a son to her. Please, Mr. Michael, give me a chance to explain. Let me speak with Ethan alone, without her around, Amanda pleaded, discreetly pointing toward Victoria. Absolutely not, exclaimed Victoria. You've already done enough harm to this child. Michael, don't let this woman near Ethan ever again. Michael looked at his son, who continued trembling in his arms. The decision was made, even though his heart was torn. Leave, Amanda. I'll deposit your full salary into your account by the end of the month, but I don't want you here, said Michael, avoiding looking directly into the nanny's eyes. Amanda nodded silently, knowing it was useless to continue arguing at that moment. But before leaving the room, she approached Michael and whispered, Please check the cameras in the other rooms, and watch her behavior closely when you're not home. Then she crouched down to Ethan's level and whispered in his ear, Aunt Mandy will always love you, my angel. If you need me, you know where to find me. Ethan tried to reach out to touch Amanda's face, but Victoria quickly took the boy from Michael's arms. Enough with the dramatic goodbyes. Come on, Ethan, you need a bath, said Victoria, leaving the room with the child. Michael remained alone with Amanda for a few tense seconds. The nanny stared at him one last time, her dark eyes conveying a depth of sadness he had never seen before. Mr. Michael, I've taken care of Ethan since he was 3 months old. He's like my own son. I would never harm him. Please don't forget that, said Amanda, her voice breaking on the last sentence. Then she left the room, went down the stairs, gathered her few personal belongings, and left the mansion where she had been happy for 5 long years. Michael stood by the window, watching her walk down the tree-lined street of Beverly Hills, a strange feeling of emptiness taking over his chest. In the days that followed, Michael tried to return to his normal routine, But he noticed that something had drastically changed in the household dynamics. Ethan, who had always been a cheerful and communicative child, now barely spoke during meals. He spent hours looking out his bedroom window, as if waiting for someone. "He's missing Amanda," said Victoria during dinner, 3 days after the nanny's dismissal. "It's natural, but he'll soon get used to the new routine." "Maybe it was too drastic to fire her like that, without even properly investigating," commented Michael, watching Ethan playing absently with the food on his plate. "Michael!" exclaimed Victoria, slamming her fork down forcefully. "Are you doubting me? Your own wife?" "It's not that, Victoria. It's just that 5 years. She took care of Ethan for 5 years. There was never a single problem," said Michael, running his hand through his greying hair. "People change, Michael. Maybe she was going through personal problems, or maybe she was always like this and we never noticed because you worked outside all day," argued Victoria. That night, Michael was awakened by Ethan's screams. He rushed to his son's room and found him having a terrible nightmare, sweating and crying in the middle of the bed. "Daddy, is she coming back?" asked Ethan, clinging to his father. "Who, son?" "Aunt Mandy. Is she coming back to take care of me?" Michael felt his heart tighten. Before he could answer, Victoria appeared in the bedroom doorway. "What happened? Why is he crying?" she asked. "Nightmare," replied Michael, rocking Ethan in his arms until he calmed down. "It must be trauma from what happened with the nanny. We'll have to take him to a psychologist," said Victoria, with a concern that seemed genuine. In the following days, Ethan's nightmares became constant. He would wake up screaming every night, and during the day he became increasingly withdrawn. Michael decided they needed to hire a new nanny urgently. The first candidate, Mrs. Thompson, an experienced 58-year-old woman, was hired immediately. She had taken care of children from Los Angeles high society for over 20 years and had excellent references. In the first week, everything seemed to be going well. Mrs. Thompson was efficient, affectionate with Ethan, and kept the house impeccable. But on Monday of the second week, she didn't show up for work. Michael called her number several times, but only got through in the afternoon. "Mrs. Thompson, what happened? Are you all right?" asked Michael. "Mr. Michael, I'm very sorry, but I can no longer work there. Some urgent family commitments came up," she replied, her voice strange. "But you didn't mention anything about family problems in the interview," insisted Michael. "These things happen suddenly, you understand. I've already left my things with the doorman. Thank you very much for the opportunity," said Mrs. Thompson, hanging up quickly. Michael was intrigued by the woman's haste to end the conversation, but Victoria reassured him. "These older people always have health problems in the family. It's normal. Let's hire someone younger this time." The second nanny, Jennifer, 28 years old, lasted exactly 5 days. On Friday morning, she simply didn't return from lunch. She left only a note saying she had gotten a better job in another city. "How strange," commented Michael. "She seemed to be adapting well." "Maybe she found the work too demanding. Ethan has been a bit difficult lately with these nightmares and tantrums," said Victoria. The third nanny, Melissa, 35 years old, was the one who lasted the least. After just 3 days, she showed up at Michael's company, asking to speak with him urgently. "Mr. Michael, I need to leave the job," said Melissa, visibly nervous. "Why? Did something happen?" I can't explain details, but I don't feel comfortable working in this environment," said Melissa, avoiding Michael's gaze. "Melissa, please, tell me what's going on. You're the third nanny to quit in less than a month," insisted Michael. "Sir, I don't want any trouble. I can only say that some situations made me uncomfortable. I'd rather look for another job," said Melissa, getting up from the chair. "What situations? Does it involve my wife?" Melissa hesitated for a moment, as if she was going to say something, but shook her head. "I'm sorry, Mr. Michael. I really need to go," she said, quickly leaving the room. That night, Michael talked to Victoria about the situation. "3 nannies in 1 month, Victoria. This isn't normal. Something is happening," said Michael. "Maybe it's Ethan. He's been very rebellious since Amanda left. Maybe he's been too much trouble for them," suggested Victoria. "No, that's not it. Ethan has always been an easy child to handle. And besides, they didn't even stay long enough to get to know his temperament," argued Michael. "Then what are you suggesting?" asked Victoria, with a slightly irritated tone. "I don't know, but I will find out," said Michael, determined. The next day, Michael decided to work from home to observe the family dynamics more closely. He settled into the home office and stayed alert to any strange movements. During the morning, everything seemed normal. Victoria took care of Ethan with apparent affection, prepared his meals, and played in the garden. But Michael noticed something that bothered him. Ethan didn't laugh, not even once during the entire morning. At lunchtime, Michael went down to eat with the family. Ethan barely touched his food. "Eat everything, Ethan. The food is delicious," said Victoria with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm not hungry," murmured the boy. "You need to eat to stay strong," insisted Victoria, her voice taking on a firmer tone. Ethan quickly glanced at his father and then went back to pushing his food around with his fork without taking a bite. "Leave him be, Victoria. If he's not hungry, he doesn't need to be forced," said Michael. "Of course he does. Children don't know what's good for them." "If you let them, they'll only eat junk," retorted Victoria. Later, Michael had to leave for an urgent meeting that couldn't be postponed. When he returned 3 hours later, he found Victoria irritated in the living room. "Where's Ethan?" asked Michael. "In his room, grounded. He threw a terrible tantrum at bath time," replied Victoria, without looking up from the magazine she was pretending to read. Michael went upstairs to check on his son and found him lying on the bed staring at the ceiling. "Hi, son. Everything okay?" "Hi, Dad," replied Ethan without moving. "Victoria said you threw a tantrum at bath time. What happened?" asked Michael, sitting on the edge of the bed. Ethan hesitated, as if carefully weighing his words. "I didn't want to take a bath because I was playing. Then she got mad," said the boy, his voice almost inaudible. "Just that?" Ethan nodded, but Michael sensed there was more. The child seemed afraid to speak. That evening, during the charity dinner that Michael and Victoria hosted annually for a local charity, a family friend, Barbara, discreetly approached Michael. "Michael, can I have a word with you?" asked Barbara, an elegant woman around 60 who had known the family for a long time. "Of course, Barbara. What is it?" "It's about Amanda. I ran into her at the supermarket last week," said Barbara, lowering her voice. "Oh, really? How was she?" "Not well, Michael. Very thin, worn out. Looked like she hadn't slept in weeks. When she saw me, she started crying," Barbara recounted. Michael felt a tightness in his chest. "Did she say anything?" "She said she missed Ethan terribly, but couldn't see him anymore. It was clear she didn't want to go into details about what happened, but, Michael, I knew Amanda well. There's no way she would ever harm Ethan," said Barbara. At that moment, Ethan, who was playing nearby, heard Amanda's name and came running over. "Were you talking about Aunt Mandy? Where is she?" asked the boy, his eyes lighting up for the first time in weeks. Ethan's reaction was so intense that he bumped into the table with the juice glasses, knocking one to the floor. The sound of breaking glass drew everyone's attention in the hall. Victoria appeared immediately, as if she had been watching from afar. "Ethan, look what you've done," she exclaimed, grabbing the boy's arm more firmly than necessary. "That hurt," complained Ethan, trying to pull away. "He just bumped into it by accident, Victoria. No need to pull him like that," said Michael, noticing the red mark forming on his son's arm. "Sorry, I overreacted. It's just he's been so restless lately. I'll take him to his room. It is getting late anyway," said Victoria, forcing a smile. As Victoria went upstairs with Ethan, Barbara whispered to Michael, "Did you see how she reacted when the boy heard Amanda's name?" Michael had noticed, and Barbara's observation only deepened his suspicions that something was very wrong in his own home. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. The following week, Michael decided to investigate more deeply. He discreetly hired a security company to install hidden cameras in strategic points around the house, including Ethan's room, the living room, and the kitchen. On the first day with the new cameras, Michael left for work as usual, but asked the company to send the recordings directly to his phone in real time. During the morning, everything seemed normal. Victoria was taking care of household chores, and Ethan was playing alone in his room. But around 10 o'clock, Michael noticed something strange through the living room camera. Victoria was on the phone, speaking in a low voice, and from the movement of her lips, Michael could make out a few words: problem, child, and get rid of. Michael felt his blood boil. Who was the person on the other end of the line? And why was Victoria talking about getting rid of some problem related to a child? He decided to come home early, making up an excuse about not feeling well. When he arrived, the house was completely silent. Victoria was in the kitchen, preparing lunch, with an overly serene expression. "I'm glad you're home early. How are you feeling?" she asked, kissing his cheek. "Better." "Where's Ethan?" asked Michael. "In his room, playing. He had lunch earlier today because he said he was hungry," replied Victoria. Michael went upstairs to check on his son, but the room was empty. He felt panic beginning to take over his chest. "Victoria, Ethan isn't in his room!" shouted Michael. "What?" Victoria rushed upstairs. "But he was just here." They began a frantic search of the house. They looked in every room, the closets, under the beds, in the garden, in the garage. Ethan had disappeared. "Let's call someone," said Michael, already reaching for the phone. "Calm down, Michael. Let's search a little more. Children hide in impossible places," said Victoria, but her voice trembled. That's when they heard a muffled cry coming from somewhere in the house. They followed the sound to the ground floor powder room. The door was locked from the outside. Michael quickly opened it and found Ethan curled up in the corner, crying and trembling. "Ethan, what are you doing here? How did you get locked in?" asked Michael, scooping his son into his arms. I was playing and the door closed," sobbed Ethan. "Doors don't lock themselves from the outside, son." "Did someone lock you in here?" insisted Michael. Ethan glanced quickly at Victoria and then lowered his head. "I don't know," he murmured. Michael noticed the exchange of glances between Ethan and Victoria. Something was definitely not right. That night, he watched the day's recordings from the security cameras. What he saw left him in a state of total shock. The footage showed Victoria leading Ethan to the powder room around 11 in the morning. She said something to the boy, who shook his head no. Then she pushed him into the small room and locked the door from the outside. Ethan had been locked in that tiny space for over 2 hours until Michael came home. Michael watched the recordings several times, trying to process what he was seeing. His wife, the woman he had married believing he had found a loving mother for Ethan, was deliberately mistreating his son. He continued watching the recordings from previous days and discovered a terrible pattern. Whenever Michael left the house, Victoria's behavior toward Ethan became completely different. In one recording, she was seen pinching the boy's arm because he had spilled water on the floor. In another, she pulled his hair because he was taking too long to put his toys away. But the most disturbing scene was in the recording from the day before. Victoria had locked Ethan in the guest room closet, the exact same place where Amanda had hidden him to protect him, as punishment for asking when Aunt Mandy was coming back. Michael Harrison realized that Amanda Wilson had tried to save Ethan, and he had fired the only person who truly cared about his son's well-being. Tears began to stream down his face as he grasped the magnitude of his mistake. Victoria wasn't just a too strict stepmother. She was a cruel person who was psychologically abusing a defenseless child. Michael spent the entire night watching the recordings, gathering evidence. He saw Victoria threatening Ethan so he wouldn't tell his father anything. He saw her making up stories about bad behavior that Ethan supposedly had during the day. He saw her manipulating situations to make Michael believe the problem was with the nannies. The next morning, Michael pretended to leave for work as usual, but stayed in the company office watching the cameras in real time, waiting for the right moment to confront Victoria. Around 10 o'clock, she received a phone call. Michael saw from her lip movements that she was talking about Ethan again. This time, he could clearly make out the words boarding school and send away. That was the last straw. Michael immediately left the office and drove home at high speed. When he arrived, he heard screams coming from upstairs. He ran up and found Victoria yelling at Ethan, who was crying in the corner of the room. "What's going on here?" asked Michael, entering the room. "Ethan wet the bed again at 5 years old." "This is unacceptable," said Victoria, her face red with anger. "He's a child, Victoria. These things happen, especially when they're under stress," said Michael, approaching Ethan. "Stress? What stress?" He's too spoiled, that's what. He needs discipline, retorted Victoria. What kind of discipline have you been giving him? Asked Michael, looking directly into Victoria's eyes. What do you mean? Normal discipline. Punishment when he misbehaves, serious talks when necessary, replied Victoria, but Michael noticed a slight tremble in her voice. Ethan, come here, said Michael, opening his arms to his son. The boy ran into his father's arms, clinging to him as if his life depended on it. Son, I need you to be very honest with me. Does Victoria hurt you when I'm not home? Asked Michael, stroking Ethan's hair. Michael, what kind of question is that? Exclaimed Victoria. Let him answer, said Michael, keeping his gaze fixed on his son. Ethan looked at Victoria fearfully, and then whispered in his father's ear. She pinches me and pulls my hair, and locks me in the dark closet, confessed Ethan, starting to cry again. Michael felt anger explode in his chest, but he remained calm so as not to frighten Ethan further. That's not true, shouted Victoria. He's lying. Children make things up. Ethan, look at me, said Michael, lifting his son's face. Are you telling the truth? Yes, Daddy. And she said if I told you she would send me away and I'd never see you again, sobbed Ethan. This revelation was like a punch to Michael's stomach. Victoria wasn't just physically abusing Ethan, but also terrorizing him psychologically. Victoria, we need to talk. Now, said Michael, his voice carrying an authority she had never heard before. There's nothing to talk about. This boy is being influenced by someone to tell these lies about me, defended Victoria. By whom? The only person who could influence him was Amanda, and she left over a month ago, argued Michael. Maybe she planted these ideas in his head before she left, suggested Victoria. Or maybe she tried to protect him from you, and I was too foolish to see it, said Michael, the realization hitting him like a sledgehammer. Victoria realized she was losing control of the situation. Michael, are you going to believe the fantasies of a 5-year-old child instead of trusting your own wife? She asked, trying to sound offended. I'll believe what the security cameras showed, Michael said coldly. Victoria's face instantly paled. What cameras? She asked, her voice coming out weak. The cameras I secretly installed last week. I have recordings of everything, Victoria, everything, Michael said, savoring every word. Victoria fell silent for a few seconds, processing the information. Then her expression changed completely. The sweet and innocent face was replaced by a mask of coldness and calculation. Those recordings don't prove anything. I was just educating a badly behaved child, she said, crossing her arms. Educating? You call it education, to lock a 5-year-old child in a dark closet for 2 hours? Asked Michael, incredulous. Strict disciplinary methods are necessary with problematic children. Ethan is clearly disturbed, probably because of the overprotectiveness of the nanny you let take care of him for years, said Victoria, her true personality finally coming to light. Michael looked at the woman before him and wondered how he had been so blind. The caring and maternal Victoria he thought he had known had never really existed. Get out of my house, said Michael, his voice low but full of authority. Excuse me? Asked Victoria, as if she had misheard. I said get out of my house, now, repeated Michael louder. You can't throw me out like this, I'm your wife, protested Victoria. And I am the father of this child you've been mistreating for months. Take your things and leave. Now, said Michael, picking Ethan up in his arms. If you do this, you'll regret it. I'll ask for half of everything in the divorce. Half of the company, half of this house, half of everything you've achieved, threatened Victoria. Do whatever you want, but you won't spend another minute near my son, said Michael, leaving the room with Ethan in his arms. Victoria screamed obscenities as Michael went down the stairs, but he didn't look back. His priority now was to take care of Ethan and try to repair the damage that had been done. That night, after Victoria left the house, taking only her clothes and personal jewelry, Michael called Amanda. The phone rang several times before she answered, and when she finally did, her voice was tired and discouraged. Hello? Amanda, it's Michael. Please don't hang up, he said quickly. There was silence on the other end of the line. Mr. Harrison? Asked Amanda, her voice uncertain. Amanda, I need to ask for your forgiveness. I made the biggest mistake of my life by firing you. I know the truth now, said Michael, his voice breaking with emotion. Mr. Harrison, began Amanda. "Ethan is okay, but he misses you very much. We both do. Please, could you come back?" asked Michael. The silence that followed seemed to last an eternity. "What happened to Victoria?" asked Amanda finally. "She's gone. Forever. I have proof of everything she did to Ethan. You were trying to protect him and I was too stupid to see it," explained Michael. Amanda began to cry on the other end of the line. "I tried to tell you, but she was very clever," sobbed Amanda. "I know. And forgive me for not believing you. You've taken care of Ethan since he was a baby. I should have known you would never harm him," said Michael. "How is he?" asked Amanda, worried. "Scared, but he'll be okay. Especially if you come back home," said Michael. "Home?" asked Amanda. "This has always been your home, Amanda. Your family," said Michael, tears streaming down his face. The next day, Amanda returned to the Beverly Hills mansion. When Ethan saw her coming through the door, he shouted with joy and ran into her arms. "Aunt Mandy, you're back. I knew you'd come back," cried Ethan, clinging to her. "I'm back, my angel, and I'm never leaving again," promised Amanda, covering the boy's face with kisses. Michael watched the scene with a mix of joy and relief. Finally, his house was coming back to life. In the weeks that followed, Michael began the divorce process. His lawyers uncovered disturbing information about Victoria's past during the investigations. She had been married twice before, always to wealthy widowers with young children. In both cases, the marriages lasted just over a year and ended with the children being sent to boarding schools or to live with distant relatives. The first ex-husband, a real estate businessman from San Diego, revealed that Victoria had manipulated situations to make him believe his twin sons were troubled and needed specialized education away from home. The second ex-husband, a doctor from Denver, told a similar story. His 7-year-old daughter had developed severe behavioral problems after Victoria came into her life. The girl began having nightmares, stopped speaking for weeks, and even tried to run away from home. Michael realized there was a clear pattern. Victoria specialized in seducing widowed men with young children, gained their trust, and then systematically abused the children until she managed to push them away from their fathers. "She's a predator," said Michael's lawyer during a meeting. "She specifically targets men made vulnerable by the recent loss of their wives, gains their trust by pretending to be a mother figure, and then uses the children as tools for manipulation." "Why does she do this?" asked Michael, still trying to understand his ex-wife's disturbed mind. "Probably for money and social status. Widowed men with children tend to be more financially generous toward women who show affection for their kids. And once married, she gains access to a life of luxury without actually having to care for the children," explained the lawyer. "But what happens when the men find out what's going on?" asked Michael. "She's very good at what she does. She manipulates the situation, so the fathers believe the problem lies with the children, not with her. In your case, if you hadn't installed the cameras, you probably never would have discovered the truth," said the lawyer. Michael felt a chill down his spine, thinking about what might have happened to Ethan if he hadn't decided to investigate. During the divorce proceedings, Victoria tried several strategies to secure a favorable division of assets. First, she claimed that Michael had been violent with her. When she couldn't prove the accusation, she argued that he had psychologically destroyed their relationship by installing hidden cameras in the house. Finally, she made up that she was pregnant, presenting falsified medical tests. "You can't divorce me now, Michael. Our child needs a stable family," she said during a mediation hearing. But Michael had already uncovered the fraud. A private investigator he hired had traced the origin of the falsified tests to an underground clinic in East Los Angeles. "The tests are fake, Victoria, and I have proof of that too," said Michael coldly. Victoria's face shifted from hopeful to desperate in a matter of seconds. You can't prove that," she stammered. "Yes, I can, and I will," replied Michael. Realizing she had lost all her cards, Victoria finally showed her true character during the final hearing. "You'll regret humiliating me like this, Michael," she screamed, being restrained by the courthouse security guards. "And that boy will never be normal. I'll make sure of that." Victoria's threats only served to convince the judge that Michael had made the right decision by divorcing her. The proceedings were finalized quickly, with her receiving only the minimum required by law. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, Please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. With Victoria out of their lives, Michael and Ethan began a long healing process. The boy started psychological therapy to deal with the trauma he had suffered, and gradually, his cheerful and communicative personality returned. Amanda became more than a nanny. She was practically part of the family. Michael significantly increased her salary and offered her comprehensive health insurance and a private retirement plan. "You don't have to do this, Mr. Harrison," said Amanda, moved by his generosity. "Yes, I do. You saved my son when I was unable to protect him." "That's priceless," replied Michael. 6 months after the divorce, life in the Beverly Hills mansion had returned to normal. Ethan played in the garden, laughed during meals, and his nightmares had practically disappeared. One Sunday afternoon, while Ethan played in the pool under Amanda's supervision, Michael received an unexpected call. "Michael, this is Dr. Richard Collins from Denver. We spoke during your divorce proceedings," said the voice on the other end of the line. "Yes, doctor. How can I help you?" asked Michael, remembering Victoria's second ex-husband. "I have news about our ex-wife. She was arrested last night," said Dr. Collins. "Arrested? Why?" asked Michael, surprised. "Attempted kidnapping. She was caught trying to seduce a widowed businessman in Miami, and when she couldn't get close to him, she tried to kidnap his 4-year-old son from a private school," explained Dr. Collins. Michael felt immense relief knowing Victoria was finally paying for her crimes, but also concern for other potential victims. "Other children are safe now," said Dr. Collins, as if reading Michael's thoughts. "Doctor, I'd like to propose something," said Michael, an idea forming in his mind. "Go ahead." "What if we create a project to help parents identify signs of child abuse, especially in cases involving abusive stepmothers or stepfathers?" suggested Michael. "Excellent idea. My daughter took years to recover from the trauma she suffered because of that woman. If we can prevent other children from going through the same thing, it will be a great service to society," agreed Dr. Collins. And that's how the Child Protection Project was born, an initiative that Michael, Dr. Collins, and Victoria's first ex-husband created together. The project offered lectures in schools, training for teachers to identify signs of abuse, and free psychological support for at-risk families. Amanda became one of the project's main contributors, sharing her experience of how she had recognized the signs that Ethan was being mistreated and how she had made the difficult decision to protect him even knowing it could cost her job. "I always tell the other nannies and housekeepers who attend our trainings, if you see a child being mistreated, don't stay silent. Even if it costs you your job, a life is worth more than any work," Amanda would say during the lectures. 1 year after the divorce, Ethan had transformed into a completely different child. He became communicative, playful, and affectionate again. His school teachers remarked on how he had improved dramatically, both in behavior and grades. "Daddy, is Aunt Mandy going to live with us forever?" asked Ethan one night, as Michael was putting him to bed. "If she wants to, yes." "Why are you asking that?" replied Michael. "Because I don't want her to ever leave again. She protects me," said Ethan, hugging the teddy bear his mother had given him years ago. "She's going to stay, son. I promise," Michael assured him, kissing the boy's forehead. 2 years had passed since Victoria had left their lives. The Child Protection Project had expanded to other cities in the state of Los Angeles and had already helped hundreds of families. Michael never remarried. He preferred to focus on being the best father possible for Ethan and on expanding the child protection work that had become his passion. One Saturday morning, as Michael drank coffee in the garden and watched Ethan play with Amanda in the pool, he reflected on everything that had happened. Sometimes he wondered how he had been so blind to the signs that something was wrong. But then he remembered that Victoria was a skilled manipulator, specializing in deceiving vulnerable men like he had been after the loss of his first wife. The important thing was that Ethan was safe and happy now, and that other children were also being protected thanks to the project he had created. "Daddy, come play with us," shouted Ethan from the pool. "I'm coming," replied Michael, getting up from his chair. As he walked toward the pool, he thought about how life could take unexpected turns. 2 years ago, he thought he had found the perfect mother for Ethan in Victoria. In reality, he had brought home the worst thing that could happen to a child. But he had also discovered that the person who truly loved and protected Ethan had already been there for years, caring for him with dedication and genuine affection. "Aunt Mandy, tell that story about your childhood in the countryside of Kentucky," asked Ethan, clinging to Amanda's arm. "Again? You've heard that story 100 times, laughed Amanda. "But I like it," insisted Ethan. Michael smiled as he watched the loving interaction between the two. Amanda truly was like a mother to Ethan, and he was like a son to her. He sat on the edge of the pool and listened as Amanda once again told the story of when she was a child and lived on her grandfather's farm in Kentucky, how she took care of the animals, and how she learned to make milk candy on the wood stove. Ethan listened, fascinated, as if it were the first time he had heard those stories. "And when did you come to Los Angeles, Aunt Mandy?" asked Ethan. "When I was 18. I came looking for work in the big city, like many people from the countryside. It was hard at first, but then I got a job taking care of children, which is what I love to do most," Amanda told him. "And is that how you came to our house?" asked Ethan. "Yes. Your daddy was looking for someone to take care of you when you were still a little baby, right after your mommy went to heaven. I fell in love with you on the very first day," said Amanda, tickling Ethan, who laughed heartily. Michael watched the scene with gratitude in his heart. Amanda had truly been an angel in their lives, even when he couldn't see it. That night, after Ethan had gone to sleep, Michael and Amanda talked in the living room about plans for the Child Protection Project. "Mr. Michael, I was thinking about something," said Amanda. "What is it?" "What if we did specific work with domestic employment agencies to teach other nannies and housekeepers how to identify signs of abuse?" suggested Amanda. "Excellent idea! Why don't you take charge of that part of the project?" proposed Michael. "Me? But Mr. Michael, I barely finished high school," said Amanda hesitantly. "So what? You have something far more valuable than a diploma. You have real experience and a heart that truly cares about children's well-being," said Michael. "If you think I can help," said Amanda, her eyes shining with emotion. "I don't think—" "I know for certain," Michael assured her. 3 years after Victoria's departure, the Child Protection Project had become a national reference. Amanda had become the coordinator of the training program for domestic caregivers and regularly spoke at conferences across the country. Ethan, now 8 years old, was a secure, intelligent, and affectionate child. He had completely overcome the traumas of the past and was becoming more and more like the mother he barely remembered, but whose love he still carried in his heart through the teddy bear he never abandoned. On a Wednesday morning, Michael was in his office when he received a call from Barbara, the family friend who had been the first to alert him about the deplorable state Amanda was in after being fired. "Michael, you need to know something," said Barbara, her voice filled with emotion. "What is it, Barbara?" "It's about Victoria. She died in prison last week," said Barbara. Michael felt a mix of relief and sadness. Relief because she could never harm another child again, and sadness for the wasted life of a person who chose the path of cruelty. "How?" asked Michael. "Apparently it was natural, heart problems. But Michael, there's something else. Her family contacted you through the lawyers." "She left a letter," said Barbara. That afternoon, Michael received Victoria's letter. With trembling hands, he opened it and read, "Michael, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer here. I know you must be feeling relief, and I can't blame you for that. I was never a good person. Since childhood, I took pleasure in causing pain to others, especially younger children. My parents never set boundaries for me, and I grew up believing I could do whatever I wanted without consequences. When I got married for the first time, I discovered I could use this cruel nature of mine to get what I wanted: money, status, a comfortable life. It was easy to seduce lonely widowers and then manipulate the situation to make them send their children away. With you it was different. Ethan was different from other children. He was strong, brave, and had someone who truly protected him, Amanda. This deeply irritated me. I wanted to break that protection, but I couldn't. When you discovered the truth, I realized I had found someone who truly loved his son, and wouldn't allow any harm to come to him. That's rare in this world. Take good care of Ethan, and take good care of Amanda. She is a special person, something I never was and never could be. Victoria. After reading the letter, Michael tore it into small pieces and threw it in the trash. He didn't want that negative energy to remain in his home for even one more second. That evening, he told Amanda about the news, but decided not to say anything to Ethan. The boy didn't need to carry that burden. "Mr. Michael, I don't feel joy about her situation, but I confess I feel relief," said Amanda. "Me too. Now we can focus completely on the future, without looking back," said Michael, and that's exactly what they did. In the years that followed, the family formed by Michael, Ethan, and Amanda continued to grow in love and companionship. Ethan became a brilliant and kind teenager, always concerned about the well-being of others. At 16, he decided he wanted to study psychology to help children who had experienced traumas similar to his. "Dad, I want to help other children like Aunt Mandy helped me," said Ethan during dinner. "I'm so proud of you, son," said Michael, his eyes welling up. "Aunt Mandy taught me that protecting those who are weaker is always the right thing to do, even when it's difficult," said Ethan, smiling at Amanda. "You've always been a special boy, my angel. You just needed a little time for your light to shine again," said Amanda, stroking Ethan's hair, who was now taller than her. The Child Protection Project had expanded to other countries in Latin America and had already saved thousands of children from abusive situations. Michael had written a book about his experience, which became a worldwide reference in child abuse prevention. But none of that mattered as much as the simple moments at home: family dinners, Sunday movies on the couch, bedtime conversations, laughter at breakfast. One Sunday afternoon, 5 years after the situation with Victoria, Michael was organizing old photos when he found a picture of Ethan at 2 years old, smiling in Amanda's arms in the backyard of the house. "Look at this," said Michael, showing the photo to both of them. "Wow, I was so small," laughed Ethan. "And Aunt Mandy was always there, taking care of you," said Michael. "She always will be," Amanda assured, hugging Ethan. Michael looked at that scene and felt his life was complete. He had lost a wonderful wife too early, had married the wrong person trying to give Ethan a mother, but in the end, he discovered that the perfect family already existed right under his nose. Sometimes, the most important people in our lives aren't those who arrive with great pomp and circumstance, but those who are there every day, quietly caring, protecting and loving, even when we don't recognize the value of that love. Amanda had risked everything to protect Ethan, and that quiet courage had saved not only the boy but the entire family. End of story. So, what did you think of this story? Have you ever been in a similar situation where someone who seemed trustworthy turned out to be a completely different person? Tell us in the comments, and if you know any signs of child abuse that other people should know, please share them too. Your experience could help other families. Don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other emotional stories like this one.